as the women who we are trying to get into the workforce. Aspire for Her's mission is to get 1 million women at work by 2025 and 10 million by 2030. It is a big task that we have, kind of taken up, but on the way, we need supporters like you to not only do career previews for women and tell them what kind of careers they have, but also tell them that it's not just the beaten track but unconventional careers like yours, and you'll have to tell us a little bit about how it all started and where it all started.
Thanks so much, Shika, and I'm honored to be here. And it is such a great gathering and great work you guys are doing. And it is like really important. I have heard so many accounts of women who have left jobs and are trying to come back into job market. And there are so many tales, and it is always really helpful for someone to be there just to even hold your hand, guide you. That means a lot, and that is what you guys are doing. Now we are talking about the career choices, and well, if you ask me, I had never really thought that I would stumble into journalism, because at one point of time after graduation, I was studying law. I studied law, and then I took a break because I was like what you call a complete nerd. I didn't know anything apart from studying, and that was a continuous, that was a hobby, that was the work, that was everything. But at some point of time, when I came to Delhi after graduation, uh, I took a break after studying law, and just for the heck of it, I got enrolled into one of the journalism courses, because I was already studying, so the entrance test was quite easy. I found it easy, so I got into it. Even then, I wasn't thinking of becoming a journalist. And but what happened is that after finishing that course, I went for internship into one of the newspapers, one of the biggest newspapers even now. So I went in for an internship. It was a 1 month internship, and I can just say I got hooked. After that, I thought I cannot do anything else. Maybe I was so much into it that that was it. And then for 3 years, I was in a news agency, working with a news agency, the largest news agency here. And then somehow TV happened. That was also not planned. I was not looking for a TV job, but one day I just walked into one of the TV channels office, and they wanted to hire me, and I got into it thinking I'll leave just after a month or two. But see, here I am, even after 23 years.
Yes, pretty much. And our paths have crossed for the last 20-23 years. Which newspaper is it that we need to be grateful to for having you here today? Is it Indian Express?
So that would be Hindustan Times.
Lovely. Yeah, and I know so many of women of our generation who has stuck it out just because the initial acceleration we found, which probably I found in Aaj Tak. Tell us a little bit about Kadamini, those initial years, because I understand that for every woman who's getting into job, even journalism for that matter, it's very important to have a firm support in those initial years. How to find those supporters within the ecosystem?
Well, it's quite difficult. As a matter of fact, if you look at journalism, unless you are actually absolutely in love with what you are doing, as far as journalism is concerned, it is not a regular career. I wouldn't say that you should just look at it as a very stable career choice, because it's not anymore. It used to be at one point of time, but it isn't. It hasn't been for a long, long time. And but I came into journalism when the salaries were not very good, but you got to do something which attracted all of us, and that was reporting the truth, or doing the campaigns, and doing stories which we really were into. So that kind of thing. But initial years were really, really difficult, because the salaries were really, really low. And there was a thought amongst people that those people who didn't get anything else would come into journalism, which was,
They would do journalism.
I have seen brilliant people in here in journalism. They are here as a choice, not as a compulsion. But then, yes, as you said, that support system is very important, because I remember when I got the first job, uh, I could barely make the ends meet. And I managed that only because that organization where I was, Press Trust of India, it did provide a hostel to the newcomers for the first year. They did provide. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for anyone who came from outside Delhi to pay the rent, to pay to commute for food. It was next to impossible. So that has to be kept in mind. And now, even now, I would say that while we look at people on television and we think they have a very great lifestyle and money coming in and fame coming in, it's only for like a handful of people, I would say. Apart from that, there's a large number of newcomers who are like struggling even now.
Kadambini, from there on to becoming a foreign affairs correspondent, I mean, an absolutely glamorous job. I know so many youngsters would give an arm and a leg to be in a place like yours, to be a foreign affairs correspondent in a key channel like NDTV. Tell us how has that journey been like? And I'm 100% sure that has not been an easy journey for you.
Oh, not an easy one. You're right. You've seen me for a long, long time, and full of detours. When I joined Press Trust of India, I was a business correspondent. I was on desk for 1 year, then I was reporting on business, and I was covering almost everything: railway finance and IMF and World Bank, then environment, all sorts of stuff. And you won't believe it. I think I have told you once when we were chatting that I was also once, when I was training, I was sent to cover a Ranji match, and I was literally sweating through the day how I would report on the because sports is something which I cannot do. And that was part of the confirmation process that I had to be on every desk at least for a
Oh
month.
my God. That really is tough. I have to tell you this story, Kadamini, that my first day in Aaj Tak, and Dibang,
Yeah.
I had done a story, and he told me that the story wouldn't get edited if I didn't go out and buy color bar and black. I didn't know color bar and black were the two signals that had to be put before every story. And I actually went around in Chandni Chowk looking for color bar and black. And in the evening, came back and told Debang that, there is no color bar and black. Will you not edit my story? So that's as much as committed we were about, getting to where we got, and about the profession. We wanted, I think it's the hunger that has kept a lot of us going in this profession. Coming back to being a foreign affairs correspondent, typically, what does it take for one to get there? And what exactly do you need to know?
Well, as I said, that there were several detours.
I'll tell you, mother, about a color bar and black later. Yeah. Yes, there are several detours, you said. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I left PTI, I did not want to be in television, but because Aaj Tak office was quite close by, as you know, it was in Videocon Towers those days, so one could walk from PTI to there. So one of my friends said, while you are giving your CV to the newspapers, why not just drop in Aaj Tak? When I went there, I was asked whether I want to be on the desk or assignment or anything else. Actually, I was asked whether I wanted to be on assignment. Now, being a print person, I had no clue what an assignment was. So, but I couldn't have said that because I didn't want to be looked upon as someone who did not know anything, in spite of being in the business for 3 years. So I said, I do not want to be anywhere else. If you want me in reporting, I'm fine. Otherwise, I'm going to walk out this door this very minute. So they were like, okay, fine. And one more interview with Uday at that time. And then I was asked to join within a week. And the interesting part is they got to know about my law background and they asked me to report on Supreme Court. Now that was huge because I had not even reported city. I had never done the lower courts, never done the high courts. I was asked directly to go to Supreme Court, and that was quite a very scary proposition. But I started and I learned on the job. So finally, there came a time where I was teased in the office at the end of that year. I was teased in the office that if you have to ask about Ayodhya case, just go to Kadambini. She would tell you what page number of the petition contains that answer.
I
So
remember you being a crack Supreme Court reporter, one of the crack reporters in those days.
yes,
It was, yeah,
I
it was an
worked.
aspirational beat to cover again, Supreme Court.
Yeah, I worked like a mad woman. I can tell you that. I mean, I was like I wanted to excel in that. I didn't want I you won't believe it. I learned Hindi typing in 3 days. I did not know before that. The only problem was I couldn't actually speak that TV lingo Hindi. I didn't know that because all the education was in English, business reporting was in English. So for that, it took me some time how to speak for TV. And I would be told ये हिंदी का निबंध नहीं लिख रही हो जो ऐसे बोल देती हो या ऐसे लिख देती हो. And I used to feel so embarrassed. That took some time. But I can tell you for 1 year, I didn't know when the sun rose, when the sun set. That was the kind of work I was doing. So that continued even when I came to NDTV and I reported in Supreme Court for 8 years. And finally, I said, okay, enough is enough. So I need to do something else. Now, the thing was, I was also supposed to anchor, that I was doing heavy lifting for some years in NDTV as far as anchoring goes, which I really not am very much into. So a decision was taken. I was asked. I said, with anchoring, I can do foreign affairs. At that time, it was not a very happening beat as it is now. It was very few and far between kind of thing. No one bothered about foreign policy. It was something to be discussed in, official settings or when you are talking with some bureaucrats, that kind of stuff. So
Or
it
in
was,
or in Luton's.
yeah, that's
Or
it.
in Luton's, and if you're a Khan Market gang, you would end up discussing foreign affairs.
Okay, हाँ करने दो उसमें तो कुछ होता नहीं है. But
Uh,
when what are doing then Mumbai attack happened. After that, with Pakistan, things went really bad. Then China happened, and suddenly it took over completely. And uh, as a foreign affairs correspondent, what is important is that you learn every day, and you learn
mm.
about so many countries. You cannot just sit back and say, "Okay, अब मुझे तो सब पता है." It doesn't work. I mean, there would be some treaty which you wouldn't know about, which comes into play, and if there is some rule at one place, there would be another in some other place. Then there is also like half the time I'm like, okay, if the State Department is briefing, it would be at 6 in the morning, so I would have to see what they send so that I don't miss anything for 7 a.m. wheel. Then you go to sleep, and before that you scan newspapers of different countries, at least those who matter to us, the Twitter feed. And by 12:01 you are sure that things you have got everything, you have sent everything to the office. So my sleep cycle has changed now, so I sleep at 1, get up at around 5:30, go through everything again, then again go back to sleep at 6:37, then get up again, then go for it editorial meeting. So it is, unless, as I said in the very beginning, unless you are in love with this thing, you cannot do it because
It's not a very stable profession. It's a everything. News doesn't happen when you want it to happen.
life balance. There's no work life balance. It's only work, work, work. I mean, life happens in, so that
In
is the,
between.
yeah.
So, Kadambini, you mentioned a couple of things, interesting things, I would say. There is you spoke about Twitter, scanning the Twitter feed. And I think there are a lot of youngsters who are attending this today. And this is a question I have often been asked from a lot of young people. How important is Twitter today in terms of the narratives that all the journalists weave and the conversations that happen, particularly, for a beat like yours, which is foreign policy. How much of the Twitter conversations do you hinge on?
It is not what you do on Twitter, it is what you follow on Twitter. what you get from Twitter. So you have to be careful about that. Now, what I, as a foreign affairs correspondent, what do I follow on Twitter? I follow the foreign affairs ministries of several countries. I follow the diplomats of several countries because you can only cross check from there. Because lots of fake news is also there. This is a real problem. So you have, even if you are getting from some source which actually you do not know and you think it's big news, you have to somehow through your sources or from Twitter verified handles, and now even verified handles are very difficult because they are paid for, so you don't know whether actually they are the right kind of account. So you have to know exactly where to verify your content, and then only you can report from that. But the thing is, with Twitter, uh, you get to know so many things. There is a riot in Dublin, and you get to know within minutes that it's happening because someone has posted
Right.
there, gone viral. But the thing is that you
I
have
remember reporting on the BlackBerry riots that happened in Britain. We were
right.
covering, yeah, we were covering a cricket tournament, and suddenly the BlackBerry riots started.
So
Yeah.
you have to cross check, and that way in India, not Facebook, but Twitter is the ideal thing. But you have to cross reference with your own contacts, with the newspapers of that country, and if possible from here. So there are so many things. It is how you use it, because I also, because there are so many students amongst us, I get to know about scholarships because there are several handles, verified handles and established handles which talk about scholarships. They talk about the free online
Kadambini, you
courses.
should let the community know when you get to know about scholarships. And I think a lot of the youngsters are looking for the kind of scholarships that, we get to know often through all these handles that you're talking about.
Yeah, there like there is IGNet, then there is Reuters. So they really post lots of different materials there, which you can follow. They post the handles as well. So if you have put an alert on that, you would get to know whatever the scholarships are, or online course. There are several online courses, really good courses, which are free of cost. You just have to register and then you get on that, or short-term courses which you can do online. So these are really helpful, because if you get into that, you can build upon your CV, and it is also helpful in navigating your social media or upping your skills. These are very important, because you cannot just sit on whatever you are doing and say that, okay, this is what I have done, now there's no need for me to learn. It is
Hmm.
everything you have to learn, because if you remember, Rika, once we had to take the camera person and camera and everything, and we would shoot it like that. Now what do? We carry a phone, we carry a tripod, maybe a small one or a selfie stick, and we shoot everything. In Israel, I have shot everything on my mobile. I mean, there are tanks all around, and I'm shooting on my selfie stick. Okay, these are tanks. Just good. Behind me is
And,
Gaza. That
we saw that there were bombs falling all around you. How was it like, shooting when the bombs were, landing all around you?
when you are in that moment, you don't think that way. The whole concentration is how we can shoot it. There was a time when I remember that the rocket fell on our hotel itself. So we were very close to the border. When the bombs fell in Gaza, our windows would rattle, literally rattle, every time there was a bomb dropped in Gaza. So when this rocket fell on our hotel, the time to run to shelter was barely 15 seconds. You can imagine. And if you have seen me in that, I'm not wearing a bulletproof. I just didn't get time to put it on and then go to the shelter, because there was just not time. And thankfully, the moment we reached the shelter, within 5 seconds, that rocket fell barely 10 feet from us. So it was, but it's a shelter, the walls are thick and everything. After that happened, that siren goes off and then you have to run. So you come to the shelter, and then that rocket has fallen. We are thinking we have been hit, and then another alarm goes off. Now this alarm is for fire. So now the rockets which are improvised are not only improvised to for sharpness, but also so that they will cause fires.
Explosives. Yeah.
Explosives, yes. So the room is that shelter is filling with smoke. And the first thought that comes into my mind is, uh, we might die in fire, them or smoke. So I should shoot this so that at least the footage is on my phone and it can be found. I mean, this is completely crazy. This is what TV does to you. For these many years when you are doing this kind of job, this is what happens. I mean, I'm thinking of having the footage, and even if I'm dead, that footage should be found. And this is something which I realized only once I came back to India, that this is what I was thinking. And we were shooting continuously. Okay, so this has happened, let's go out and shoot this. So this is how it felt that time. But one time which I felt completely exposed to the rockets which were like going just over us was where we didn't have any shelter. We did take shelter, but it was actually not a shelter. It was just behind a concrete wall, which is not good enough for a rocket. I mean, if it had hit, it would have hit really bad. And it happened at the border as well. So it was quite an experience. And I mean, once it's done and over, I think it was something huge. And the importance of it, the whole idea of it hits you only after some time. I mean, people,
Mhm.
they were saying stay safe, but how safe can you be? I mean,
In the middle of a war, yeah. Kalmini, one question I have, one of the footage from your stint, your ground reports was the bombs landing and you are running into a shelter. I think you spoke about it, and you're still shooting. What does it take in that moment to not think that there are bombs around me? I mean, stay so stable, mentally and physically stable, and do your job. You are literally on the edge at that point. You're not in a stable, situation where you can send footage from also, and you don't know whether that footage is going to go through anyway.
well, yes, but
Talk to us about that moment. I mean, how did you do that? How could you shoot when there were, you know that bombing was going on?
no, actually, what happens for me, what happened, Rika, was I felt as if time had suddenly slowed down. And like like in camera, when we shoot, we think in frames. So it was like one slow frame after another. We knew it was happening, and I knew I had to do my job. I was there for that. So the concentration was completely on what was going on around me. So at that moment, I was like, okay, I don't have to be that close, but I have to shoot it. And once it's done, we have to send it. How that will happen, that I did not think at that moment, but I was shooting. That complete concentration was to shoot what was happening around me. So I
Mhm.
guess that concentration does help. And of course, we think of safety as well, but it does not come very consciously, because when you are doing that, you are stepping into one uh, in a zone where actually it is not 100% possible. I also remember I was on that in that border town Shedrot, where the terrorists had come on 7th. We were there. We had reached there on 8th itself, to Israel, and at the border. So when I was in Shedrot, that the shelter where they were putting people to go back to Tel Aviv or somewhere safer, that shelter was barely this much. I mean, not more than that. And there were so many journalists, foreign journalists, and everyone. And I was just talking to a lady there, and suddenly these sirens go off. And for a rocket to reach that place, it would be barely 10 seconds, because it's so close to Gaza. So suddenly I'm finding myself pushed inside. I'm doing nothing, but I'm being pushed inside. I don't want to go into the shelter, but I'm being pushed inside. So there are moments where you can't do anything. Another time I was told to come back because there were still these terrorists in the town. We were told, do not go further away from the army installations. The people, the army is there, the police is there. So do not walk off very far, because we are still in the process of flushing them
Killing.
out. Yeah.
So,
So there
how
were
many women were there in that shelter that you were pushed in?
there were like two volunteers, and I think there was one elderly lady who was supposed to be evacuated. Then two, three other foreign journalists were there. That's it. So, but it was something like you had no control. You were just pushed in. The siren went off and you were pushed in. And I was looking for my colleague. I couldn't find him anywhere. So I was panicking. Where is he? Maybe he might get hurt or something. So I was panicking. Where is he? So these were the different situations. And these are the things which I guess I had not covered it like this before. I mean, this was the first experience for me. Most of the times, what does the foreign correspondent do? So they are like usually covering the PM or something which is like a COP28 where climate summit is happening or some Quad summit is happening. You are saying, okay, this country said this, Biden said this, and Macron said this, and this is how it's going to impact. This is an entirely different genre altogether. So
Conflict. Yeah,
yeah.
you're in the middle of a conflict. Now, for years and years, I have totally admired Christian Amanpour. And there's one question I always wanted to ask her, and I have to ask you today. What was the situation of the bathroom? Did you get any bathroom to go to? Did you get like a proper loo somewhere? Because that's one of the biggest things I think about when I'm on the field.
No, that is a very important question, especially for women. There have been times, Rika, I can tell you, when I left early in the morning to go to the field near Gaza, and I would drink less water so that I don't have to go to the loo. You know, and even while we came back, and the situation had become really, really unstable, there were two nights where, like, almost all night was spent in the shelter. We couldn't go even to the rooms because every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes, there was a siren for rockets, and rockets came in barrages. It was not one or two, it was like 10, 15 coming continuously after every 10 minutes. So, and I was so tired of wearing this BP bulletproof and running, that finally we sat there because we couldn't do anything else. And when you're talking about lose, that's why I'm mentioning. I washed my hair. I'm a person who would wash my hair every other day, right? I couldn't wash my hair for 1 week because I didn't know that I would go into the bathroom and start washing my hair and the siren would go off. When I used to go to the loo, I would be like, God, please don't let the siren go off right now because I do not want to die in the loo. It sounds funny after this, but
No, it doesn't sound funny. It doesn't sound funny at all. This is what it is. This is how life is in a war zone.
so
I mean, while covering elections, I have kind of
oh yes.
experienced things like this, but I mean, it would be another story altogether being in a war zone.
Came back to Tel Aviv, what did happen was I was in the bath. It was like late at night. I had been out all day. It was late at night, around 9, 10. And I thought finally, you know what used to happen, that when Israel used to bomb Gaza at night, it was very, very heavy carpet bombing, then the rockets would be less. So I thought, okay, this time I can take a leisurely bath. I couldn't. I went into the bath. Within 5 minutes, the sirens went off. And I can't tell you, I've never ever done this in my life. I had this that robe around me, and I just rushed into the shelter. It was right there uh, in the corridor behind the stairs, and I rushed there. So this is something which people are living there with every day. And I mean, Gaza would be worse. So, for a reporter, this is something very important. And also, it was important that I stood there and I also talked about what was happening in Gaza. And I was also thinking, okay, there are so many soldiers around, right at the border. There were soldiers around. Every time they would ask us to move because yes, even journalists were dying. If some rocket
Something
might fall.
happened, they would be responsible.
So it did happen, and sometimes journalists are also in northern Israel. Journalists were targeted by Houthi rebels. So uh, they would tell us to go back. And when I was doing this live, I was like, okay, this soldier is standing next to me. I don't know whether he understands English properly or not, because most of them did not. They spoke Hebrew. And I was like, I'm also talking about Gaza. I don't know what his translation would be. I don't know how he would take it. And
Hmm.
how he would react, because the tensions were running high. And once we were like actually almost shot. It was barely 5 seconds, and it would have been a like friendly fire, because our driver was driving so fast, he did not see these soldiers stop us. So by the time he stopped, the guns were pointed at us. So it would
Hmm.
have gone right there, and for no fault of ours. So there is no definitive thing where you can say what might happen, what might not happen. And this was war zone, but actually as a journalist I would say that happens all the time. So that is the professional description of journalism. So I'm saying that again and again, if you are in love with it, then only you can do it. Otherwise it's not a cushy and comfortable job. It does not work like that.
It's not nothing like a corporate job.
Yeah.
It's very it's very different from that, and it is in an ever changing. It is having to adapt it to an ever changing environment, work with ambiguities, because every day is a new day. Every day something new is thrown at you. Kadambini, I think there are very interesting few things that you said about surviving, in a war zone. The other thing I really have to ask you, I mean, see, we see hundreds and thousands of civilians across the border. As a journalist, it might impact you as well. I mean, we've been hearing a few nurses of Red Cross on a few channels as to how it impacted them. As a journalist, when you came back, and often, we are the kinds who reflect on what happened and how things happened. We saw lives being lost. We saw dear ones being lost. How do you react to all of this personally and professionally? How do you then, appear on air, uh, being very objective about what is happening?
uh, when I started working, there was I saw that there was some accident and three people had died. That was in the news agency PTI, and there was no reaction from anyone. So over a period of time, over 1 year, I started thinking that people do not react, and maybe I will also become like that. It does not work. It works differently for everyone, because there
Hmm.
are times when I'm like I feel so upset that I'm on the verge of crying, but I do not want to do that on camera. And you have to actually stop yourself from like really bursting out in tears. And I still sometimes, I like, even last night, I dreamt that I was back there, and I was asking someone to go to shelter. It happens once in a while since I've come back. And there are small things which I now take as a leisure. Like I went for a first aid. I had fallen down and I had a really bad cut. So I had got some first aid done at the border, where soldiers were also getting their first aid done. And next day, that same place was bombed, because it was in the open. That first aid NGO had put an ambulance, and I was in that ambulance just the previous day. So there are so many things which I don't take for granted anymore.
Hmm.
Things like I there are no I cannot hear any rockets here, sirens here. For a long period of time, when I came back, I would hear the ambulance and I would be taken aback. I mean, the sirens are more or less the same. So that is there. Then uh, that joy of having a longish bath, that is also there. uh, then you can go to some place without thinking that you'll be targeted on way. And like, there are not snipers moving around. There would be also, because when there is a law and order situation that way, then people, even normal people, are stopped and asked several questions. So these are the small things which I'm grateful for. And but see, at the end of the day, what happens is that you report, you are affected by it, but somehow you manage to actually manage those feelings. And the best thing you can do as a professional, as a journalist, is to give a very unbiased view of whatever you are reporting on. It's not your platform, it's people's platform. I have always believed that it's a people's platform. When you are a journalist, it's a people's platform, and you give them the facts, let them decide for themselves what they think about that particular situation. You are giving them facts. I am telling them this is happening here in Israel, this is happening in Gaza, and this is the situation, these are the facts at the moment. And then you form an opinion for yourself. So I'm happy at the end of the day if I have done my job honestly. So that's that.
And when you came back, I understand about the joys of long bath, and I think another question that all youngsters would like to know is, coming back to your newsroom, did it feel different? Were you looked upon differently as someone who's just covered a war, like a venerated war reporter, a war hero, something like that? Were you in the newsroom? Were the reactions different?
I would say it was a reaction I had not expected, frankly, because there have been many stories people have appreciated. Sometimes bosses have appreciated, and sometimes my colleagues have appreciated. Sometimes someone would come and say, "Your PTC was great, piece to camera was great," and this that. But this was something for which I got overall appreciation from everyone, from the bosses to colleagues, even our parking
I
attendants.
was
They
very glad to see you back in one piece.
all my friends were, especially
Yeah,
most, like, I'm so accident prone at even normal times. So I would bump into doors. So all my friends were very glad that I've come back in one piece.
yeah.
So that was really something I really appreciate. I mean, people were so concerned and so appreciative of the work. So that really lifts your heart, literally.
I think that's the joy of journalism, the appreciation that one gets, the kind of the way you are looked up, the reverence, the appreciation. I think that is something you probably don't get in many other professions, despite all the lows that a journalist encounters, the hours, the uneasy hours, the travel, being in the middle of rugged terrain, war. You spoke about war. For a journalist who's covering elections, it's equally tough being in the middle of political rallies. And these days, with a polarized atmosphere, for a woman to be out there in the middle, it becomes really, really difficult. So it is difficult, but the highs are such fantastic highs that, yes,
Yeah,
I
and
think,
not only war,
yeah.
Rika, if you remember, I had done this protest, the Gujar agitation, when it started the very beginning. I remember when I went from Dosa to the village where this agitation was going on, there were at least thrice we were stopped by mobs and we would have been killed, literally killed. And once we were forced, they put fire to our truck and they forced us to film it, and I was scared that it would explode. So that happened right here in Rajasthan, and that time also it was very difficult. And when I went there to the main place where they had kept the dead bodies of guys who had died in police firing, there was a young guy who had died. There were five bodies on that tractor trailer, and I was the only journalist who was allowed to go inside because in the village there were only women left. So I went
Mm.
there, I talked to them, I shot with them, I shot all that had happened, the bullet holes in their mud walls. And the widow of that young guy, she was barely 16 or 17. She had these bright green eyes, and I was just shocked. I looked at her that what will happen next. So there are so many moments as a journalist. We live so many moments. I think one, that appreciation which comes, which is not only from your friends and colleagues and bosses, but also from people because they see you on that platform. Another one is you get to live a life like no one else. Like there are so many varied experiences. I think we live experiences to experiences. It gives you like a window like no one else. I mean, it's completely different.
It's a different window to the world.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And then sometimes there comes a story where you are able to help people. I mean, people who had never expected that they would get that kind of help, and suddenly you come across that story and you have done that story, and in the process, that person is helped. Like these are the two, three things I think which keeps a journalist going. And in spite of all the hardships, in spite of everything else, then it looks like okay, it's worthwhile.
It is worth it, yeah. I think, Kadamini, we'll stop at that. If there are any questions, we will take questions and then we can end the session.
Sure.
Are there any questions? Anyone wants to ask questions to Kadamini?
No, I think not a question, but just an observation. And very early in life, Kadambini, I had these very romantic thoughts, I would say, of becoming a journalist. And I just realized, and Rika and I discussed this, but not often enough. But I just realized that I could have never done this. I think the kind of work that you do, incredibly brave. I think incredibly, I would say, selfless in a way, because you are bringing news to the world. But the kind of sort of situations and the kind of danger that you have to embrace to be that voice of truth is incredible. I mean, I would never have thought of it this way. And, the picture that Rika painted of, you actually holding the shooting the scene, as well as when the destruction is going on and the rockets are, just firing away. It is just incredible. So thank you so much for doing what you do. Thank you for your service. And I think it's just been an incredible experience listening to you. Seriously, I think Shumana is saying something, so maybe we'll let her go. And but it's amazing. Thank you so much for doing what you do. Hats off, really, really.
We will just wait for 2 minutes to see if there are any questions coming through. Or else, Kadamini, we can have your thoughts that you would like to end with, your message that you would like to give to the community, to the young girls.
Oh yes, I think it's this is something very important that you guys are doing, as I said. And if someone actually wants to do this, you will have to be prepared for a struggle. You would also have to be prepared for the risk because sometimes things do not turn out as we want them to turn out. And it requires extremely hard work. You cannot just like flap your way through it. It won't work because at the end of the day you have to. I mean, there are different things which are done in television. You can be an anchor, you can be a reporter, you can be on the desk. Like Rika, you can choose a very niche kind of reporting, of sports reporting, very few women in there, and she makes it look like so glamorous, so uh, everything. It looks like Rika gets all the news, all the celebrities. So I look at her with awe. Oh God, she has such great contact. That is there. And yes, but if you are looking for more of experiences and uh, living a life which is not very defined by, let's say, how you do it, because even now it is I have come from okay, you are a journalist, but what do you do for a living, to okay, you are a TV journalist, we don't believe you phase. So it has been a long journey and all sorts of things. So you have to be actually completely committed to it if you want to do it. But there are also people have chosen other options as well. If you work in journalism for some time, then there are lots of friends who have gone to corporate communication and PR jobs. That is also there. So
Also, Kadambini, for someone like you who's worked in foreign affairs, I mean, if anyone chooses foreign affairs, later in life, one of the other professions I think is policy. To do politics and policy at the government level, at
Thanks.
different other think tanks,
Yeah, so that is
work
that is
think
also
tanks.
there. But one thing which I want to say is that you will have to upgrade yourself constantly, because you cannot be stagnant. You have to learn new skills, and for that you'll have to be on lookout. You'll have to be on a lookout for opportunities to upgrade your skills, to get the opportunities that something is happening. You take initiative. So those are the things which you will have to do on your own. But of course, it's money wise, it may not always be like very enriching, but experience wise, it can be great.
It's a life full of opportunities. Kadambini, thank you very, very much for inspiring us at Aspire for Her. It's your journey also enriches us and a lot of young girls who are here in many, many ways.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
We've got some
Thank
lovely comments here, and I think Shimona says this is exemplary, inspiring. Thanks so much for your work. Glad that you came back safe. Hats off to you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing your experience. As Farisha and Nilanjana is awestruck. So on that happy note, I think thank you so much. Thank you from all of us, Kadam.
Thank you, Madhura.
thank
Thank you.